Today we have Kathy with Straight Talk from Kathy here to discuss with us about HPV. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks so much for having me.
How can somebody contract HPV?
HPV is a sexually transmitted disease. There are 40 strains of HPV, and people find that really surprising because they think it's all one thing, but it's not. Some of them are very minor. You know, your body passes them, they go on. The things that we want to be concerned about today are genital warts and the effects of cervical cancer and other cancers on the body from strains of HPV that don't pass. But they are all sexually transmitted. That includes oral sex, anal sex, or vaginal sex.
Here we have Megan here with us to talk about how HPV has affected her life. Megan, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what did you know about HPV?
Pretty much nothing.
Nothing growing up or anything?
There wasn't Gardasil when I was in high school. There wasn't any of that, so no, I didn't know. We weren't very educated on HPV. It was more gonorrhea and chlamydia and pregnancy. There wasn't really much about HPV.
So what made you go to the doctor and find out that you were diagnosed with HPV?
I was in a monogamous relationship, and I maintained my yearly pap smears, appointments, and annual exams. And so I went in for a routine pap smear, not expecting anything to come back. And within about 3 weeks, I got a phone call from my physician saying that he needed to come in for the results, which was not normal for me. And then she sat down and said that there was abnormal cells that were found on my pap smear. And at that point, then we retested. She did what's called the high-risk test. And so she took more samples and actually pulled pieces of my cervix to make sure that she got every sample she could. And then that came back and said that I had HPV.
So how did that change your life from that point on, and including your relationship?
The relationship was a great relationship leading up to that point. He was my best friend, so that didn't change too much because you don't really know who gave it to who. It's not like you could test him, but I mean 9 times out of 10 it's not going to come back positive unless there is genital warts that are visible. And mine came back as being positive for the strand that caused the precancerous cells and later on cancer. So there was a lot of confusion because we both wanted to know, well, who gave it to who, because we'd had very limited partners before each other. So that was hard. Intimately, we completely stopped having sex for like 3 or 4 months because it's hard because you're, as cheesy as it might sound, your vagina defines you as a woman in some sense. I mean, and you don't want to think that you're dirty or that you have any problems. So that was kind of hard. It was a blow.
So you didn't experience anything physical, emotional?
Emotionally, yes. Emotional. And physical, yes, with the cryotherapy. But emotionally, it was difficult. Like I said, your vagina defines you as a woman. I mean, you don't ever want to think of anything being wrong. And so when they told me that something was wrong, I was young and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to have sex with anybody my whole life, and I want to get married and I want to have babies. And the relationship that I was in, I thought that's where that was going to go with that man. And so, there was, if he wanted kids, was I going to be able to produce, and that was, emotionally it was hard. Plus I presented it to my parents, and that was embarrassing because, you're not supposed to have sex till you're married. Well, I've had sex and now I possibly have HPV. So my mom went through the testing with me and was there for me just like he was. So emotionally it was difficult thinking that something was actually wrong with me. Physically not wanting to have sex.
So how old were you when you found out you had HPV?
I was 19.
And you have a child now, do you not?
I do.
Were you afraid of possibly
transmitting
it?
I was concerned about that, but like I said, I had a negative pap smear from the time that I was about 21 until I was 28. I've still had normal pap smears. So my concern wasn't as great. I was concerned about it, but I was told that I didn't have an active virus. I didn't necessarily have a flare-up per se. So there wasn't a great possibility that if I did have a vaginal birth that it would be transmitted to her. But I didn't have a vaginal birth, so I had a cesarean. I was worried.
And did you have unprotected sex? Is that why you were afraid that you possibly or is that why you possibly went to the doctor? Or?
No, the person that I was with had only had one other partner before me. There wasn't an issue. I wasn't concerned that STDs were present. Like, I had no signs or symptoms. I had regular periods. There was no discharge. There was no pain. There was nothing. I only went just like for a routine pap smear, expecting everything to be fine. So.
You're married now. Were you initially open with him about your experience with this disease?
I was. Yes, I was. He and I dated quite a few times in the past, and when we got together, we knew that we'd be in a relationship. We were going to get married, have kids. I felt obviously compelled to tell him because I was going to share the rest of my life with him. Although I had nothing come back saying I was even infected, it was still something that he did need to know. And so I was honest with him about it. And both of us were checked for STDs prior to us actually having sex again because we were concerned about everything, just making sure that we were kind of starting with a clean slate.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you recommend as, girls our age, what do you recommend as a preventative measures or, kind of advice for avoiding these kinds of things?
I think with my age and being a daughter, or having a daughter, I've kind of reverted back to the way that my mom raised me, which is obviously abstinence. But I know that's unrealistic for most women, and which is a choice that I made myself. Other than that, I would definitely make sure that condoms are readily available. I mean, a lot of women aren't educated about the disease as well as other diseases. And so they think if you do the pull-out method or whatever it is that people are doing nowadays, that you won't get pregnant. And that's usually a girl's main concern is, I don't want to get pregnant. I don't want to have to go home and tell my parents I'm pregnant. But the unfortunate thing is if you're not mindful of everything else that you could catch, you could go home and tell your parents that you have something different. So I would definitely practice safe sex. Or no sex.
With your experience on campus doing Straight Talk with Kathy, how would you suggest raising awareness about HPV since people are typically awkward when talking about this disease?
Oh, people are so awkward about talking about sex in general, right? As a nation, we just can't even say the word. So if I was in your classroom right now, I would say, all right, everybody repeat after me. Sex. Yay, very good. See, these three can say it, or four. Hopefully, you guys can say it too. Awareness starts with you. Awareness starts with doing projects like this. It is one of the STDs that hasn't gotten a lot of attention on campus. We haven't done a lot of promo. So I hope that maybe an organization or a group of you guys could pick it up and get the word out there, especially about the vaccination. Planned Parenthood has some excellent information that they could share with any organization that wanted to do something about HPV, as well as Bacchus and Gamma if you go to their website.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys so much for having me.